Adult Solutions. Add-on desires.
Hello and welcome to Adult Solutions. Today we will see a new chapter, that is heredity, from parent to progeny. Now, when you look here, from parent to progeny, something is passing from parent to progeny, right? Progeny is nothing but the offspring or the next generation. So in this chapter we will see what is actually getting passed and how that will be passed from one generation to other generation. So first let us go with the definition of heredity. So heredity is nothing but the transmission of characters or traits from parent to offspring is known as heredity. Now, transmission of characters. What would be the characters that are getting transferred from one generation to other now? This character could be anything. It could be the skin color, it could be the color of the eyes, shape of the nose, shape of ears, anything. So, these characters or traits are getting transferred from one generation to other generation. This is known as heredity. Next, inheritance. We have seen that transmission of characters or traits from one generation to other generation is heredity, but the process by which these characters are transmitted, that is known as inheritance. So only the transmission you call it to be heredity, but the process through which it is getting transferred, that is known as inheritance. Now, in order to understand this heredity, we also need to understand first term, that is variation. Now, when you look around in the world, you see a lot of people. One person is never equal to the other person, except the twins, right? They are having similarities. But when you compare other people, one person is never the same as that of other person. So, these differences in the characters or the traits within closely related groups is known as variation. Now, as I have already said, what are the characters? That could be the height of a person, it could be the shape of the nose or color of your eyes, color of the skin, all these accounts to be characters. Now, what is meant by a closely related group? For example, when you compare humans, humans are closely related groups. When you compare two species of monkeys, they might be belonging to the same group, but they belong to different species. We'll just look into an example over here. When you look into these two pictures, you might see that these two monkeys look of the same species. Definitely they belong to the same order, that is Hominidae, but they belong to two different species and hence there is certain variations in between these groups. For example, look into the skin color of these two groups. They are having a different skin color, they are having a different hair color. So here the characters of these two monkeys are different. That means they are showing variation. Similarly, when there are differences in between two closely related groups, they can also be variations in the people of same group. For example, when you compare these all cats belong to the same group, but even then there are differences in the color of their hair, the design which they are having on their hair, everything is different. So variations not only can occur in different groups but also in the same group as well, as we have seen in the case of these cats. So when you compare in humans as well, you can see that the ear lobule, this part of the ear is known as the ear lobule. When you look into these four pictures, you can see variations in the ear lobule as well. Here it is extended in a horizontal manner. In this part it is extended in a vertical manner. Here you can hardly see an ear lobule, and in this part you can see a fissure like this. So many humans, they will be having variations in this ear lobule as well. So since the shape of the ear is a character, we can say that they also show variations. Similarly, when you compare the color of the eyes, any person can be having blue eyes, the other might be having brown. The color of iris varies from one individual to other individual. So since there is a difference in the character, that accounts to be a variation. Now when you compare in a group of plants, now if you observe this picture, these four pictures belong to the same plant, but what variation you can observe here is the color of the flower that they are producing. So hence this is one example of variation. Similarly, when you compare these three pictures, they are of the same plant, but the shape and the color of the leaves that they are producing is different. So that is another example for variation. Now in variation not only there is differences in the characters, but a new character can also arise. That also accounts to be a variation. For example, development of an extra thumb, that is a new character that has evolved. So that also accounts to be variation, and these kind of variations will also be inherited in the generations. Now from start we have seen that I have told the definition of heredity as transmission of characters or traits from one generation to other generation, and I also gave you the example of characters, and I was using this word as a synonym. Character and trait I was using as a synonym, but you need to understand that there is slight difference in between these two words, that is character and trait. Now we will see what is the difference between these character and a trait. Now character is something that it is a quality that defines a person. When you come into biological perspective, a character can be defined as any observable physical character. Anything you can observe, that accounts to be a character. Now we will see certain examples of characters. Here are some examples. For example, height of a person, that is an observable physical character. So, and the color of the hair, that is also a observable physical character. The shape of ear lobule, that is also an observable physical character. So all these were the examples of characters, that is height of a person, color of the hair, shape of the ear lobule, color of the eyes, shape of the nose, shape of the lips. All these accounts to be the examples for characters. Now trait is the variant of a character. Now when I give you the example, you will understand this much better. As I said, character, height of a person is a character, right? But whether it is tall or short, that accounts to be a trait. So tall is one trait of character height, short is one trait of character height. So character was height of a person. Tall is one trait, short is another trait for height, which is a character. Similarly, we have seen color of the hair is a character. So black colored hair will be a trait, or white colored hair will be a trait for character color of the hair. Similarly, we have seen that shape of the earlobe was a character. Now whether it is a broad ear or a narrow ear, that will be a trait. I hope by now you have understood the difference between a character and a trait. Character is any observable physical feature of a person. Trait is the variant of that character. Now in a population there will be different traits for a particular character. Now for character color of the eyes, one person might be having brown eyes, the other might be having black eyes. So there are differences in the traits for a particular character in the population. I think by now you have understood the definition of heredity better when I said that there are transmission of characters or traits from parent to progeny or the offspring. Now how these characters are transmitted? For example, when we see over here, an example of inheritance we will see here, that is father is having a big nose, mother is having bushy eyebrows. There are high chances that the son might be having big nose and bushy eyebrows. That is one example of inheritance. That is the son has inherited the character of big nose and bushy eyebrows from his parents. Now these traits are transmitted from one generation to other generation during reproduction. Reproduction is a process of giving birth to a new offspring of its own kind. So during reproduction, these traits will be transferred from parents to the offspring. Now during reproduction, mother produces ova, father produces the sperm. During fertilization, ova and sperm give rise to zygote. This zygote gives rise to an embryo and embryo develops into a baby. So, at which point during this reproduction variation takes place? That is this point, when there is formation of a zygote. So, characters from mother and characters from father will be transferred to this zygote. Hence, this zygote will be having characters of both mother and father. So, during this point, there are chances of variations. The study of this variation was first done by Gregor Johann Mendel, and hence he is known as the father of genetics. Gregor Johann Mendel, he was a monk and he used to live in a monastery. He did not do any of his research in a laboratory or university, but whatever monastery plants he were having, he used to do all his research on that plants. His particular interest was a pea plant. Most of the research of this heredity and inheritance was done by Mendel on pea plant, Pisum sativum. Now, you might be wondering why Mendel has chosen only pea plant and not other plants. That is because there were certain advantages and certain characteristics that pea plant possess. Let us look into that characteristics. First thing, it is having well-defined characters. Now, well-defined characters, you know by now that what is a character. So, in this plant, the character would be either the color of the flower or the height of the plant or what the shape of the pod is or the shape, color of the pod. All these accounts to be the characters in this plant. Now, it was having bisexual flowers. That means both the stamen and style are present in the same flower. Now, the third point is predominantly self-pollinating. Now, when a plant is having a bisexual flower, that is, it is having the stamen and style in the same flower, there are high chances that it undergoes self-pollination. There is, for cross-pollination, there is no need for honeybees and all. For self-pollination, directly it can undergo self-pollination within the same flower and it can produce fruits without any delay or without any problem. Hence, that was one of the advantage, predominantly self-pollinating, and it was very easy for the pea plant to undergo cross-pollination also. And the last point is, it is an annual plant. That means it flowers, fruits and dies within 1 year. So, that was also one advantage. That means within 1 year he could have studied one complete character. So, all these were the advantages why he has selected the pea plant. The first one is, it is having well-defined characters, it was having bisexual flowers, it was predominantly self-pollinating and it was suitable for cross-pollination. Also, it was an annual plant. Here you can see the life cycle of a pea plant, that is, it flowers, it fruits and it dies within 1 year. Hence, it is known as an annual plant. Now, when Mendel was studying these pea plant, he has observed that there are specific characters or there is something which is responsible for giving these characters. That part he named as factors. So, he said that certain factors are responsible for giving a plant a particular character, and in each plant these factors will be different, hence it gives rise to a different character. Now, Mendel has studied nearly 1000 pea plants which were of 34 varieties. Out of all those plants, he has studied 7 characters of a plant, and all of his study he has done on the 7 characters. Each year he has studied one specific character and he has given the information how it is passed from one generation to other generation. So, these 7 characters were seed shape, seed color, pod shape, pod color, flower location and plant size. Now, in each of these characters, 2 traits were present. We know that trait is a variant of a character. So, seed shape is a character, and whether it is round or wrinkled, that is the trait for that character. So, seed shape here is a character. Whether it is round or wrinkled, that is a trait. So, each of these characters was having 2 different traits. For seed shape, it could be, there were two traits, round and wrinkled. For seed color, there were two traits, yellow or green color. Pod shape, inflated or constricted. Pod color, green, yellow. Flower color, purple, white. Location of the flower, axial, terminal. Plant size, tall or dwarf. Now, flower location, axial means it is present on the sides of the plant, and terminal, that means the flower is at the top of the plant. As you can see here, this is the terminal position, these are the axial position. So if the flower is on the sides of the plant, then it is known as axial position, and if it is at the top part, then it is known as the terminal position. Now, as we have seen that Mendel has said that each of the character is controlled by a particular factor. Now, each of these characters is having two constraining traits. We have seen, out of those two traits, one of them is the dominant trait and the other one is the recessive trait. Now, what is meant by a dominant trait? Dominant trait is the one which expresses itself in the F1 generation or first filial generation, and recessive trait is the one which does not express itself in the F1 generation. You will get to know this better in the next slides. Now, dominant allele is always written in capital letters and the recessive allele is always written in the small letters. Now, let me show you what are the dominant traits in Mendel's characters. Now, these were the characters that we have seen that Mendel has observed in the pea plant. So, out of these, all these characters, that is round seed shape, yellow seed color, inflated pod, green colored pod, purple colored flower and axial position of the flower and tall plant, all these were the dominant characters, and the remaining which were there, they were the recessive characters. So, all these are the dominant and these are the recessive characters. Now, dominant character, as I said, you have to write it in the capital letters, and dominant character is the one which expresses itself in F1 generation. Also, you need to know that whenever dominant character is present, then recessive character will not be expressed. Now, let us see how we need to write the dominant alleles and recessive alleles. For example, we have seen the seed color. In that seed color, we had two traits now. It was yellow and green. We have also seen that yellow colored seed is the dominant trait and green color of the seed is the recessive trait. Now, when I have to write this trait yellow, I said dominant is always written in capital letters. So, yellow I will be writing as capital Y. Now, when I have to write green, I said recessive traits are always written in small letters. So, for recessive, I won't be writing it as small g. Instead, I will be writing it as small y. So, by this you can understand that the recessive trait has to be written with the letter that you have used for the dominant trait. So, the dominant trait over here is yellow. So, I am writing dominant as capital Y. Then, for recessive, even if it is green color, instead of writing it small g, I have to be writing it small y. Similarly, if it is the shape of the pod, we have seen that it is either inflated or constricted. So, inflated we know is the dominant character and constricted is the recessive one. So for dominant, if I want to write the character, I will be writing it as capital I, and if I have to write the recessive character constricted, then I will be writing it as small I. Similarly, if I want to write the position of the flower, we have two positions, axial and terminal. We also know that axial is the dominant trait and terminal is the recessive trait. Now in order to write it, I will be writing axial position as A and this position as small a. I hope you got this by now.
Add-on solutions. Add-on